Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. Welcome to another episode of Haqiqatjou, where we discuss religion and politics, the two least controversial subjects. As always, I'm your host, Daniel Haqiqatjou, and today we're going to look at the recent comments from Donald Trump, where he is going on a rant, specifically against Somalis, calling them garbage and saying that we have to remove the garbage from our country. So he didn't really hold back much in expressing his attitude. And earlier he had also made comments against Ilhan Omar, the Muslim woman, ostensibly Muslim woman, congresswoman, who is far left progressive. And he had even comments for her and said she's wearing a swaddling hijab. So this is interesting because Donald Trump, in very recent history, just a couple of weeks ago, he was saying that that America needs immigrants, that America actually needs immigrants, needs Chinese students to come in. And this was an interview that Donald Trump did, where the interviewer is telling him, you know, why are these visas being issued? Like, didn't you campaign against immigration? And that was one of your main campaign promises, is to limit and shut down immigration. And he said that, well, we need the students. We need Chinese students, 600,000 Chinese students. We need Indians as well to come and do tech jobs, these technical jobs that Americans can't do. And then the interviewer was shocked and said, you don't think Americans can do these jobs? And Trump said, no, you can't take, one of these Americans off of the unemployment line. You think that they can program computers and design rockets and build missiles? He just completely trashed the American people and said, no, we need immigration. Otherwise, our universities are going to go bankrupt because there's no one to pay tuition. And really, Americans are incompetent. This was what Donald Trump was literally saying just a couple of weeks ago in a major interview. But now he's shifted gears. Now he's back on the nationalist train, saying all kinds of crude, mean words against immigrants, not just Somalis, but others as well. And now he's actually put into place a policy, executive order, to ban any kind of entry from 19 different countries. And many of them Muslim countries, some of them non-Muslim countries like Venezuela in South America. So 19 countries are getting banned. It's not like his first term where it was a Muslim ban, because it's some of these non-Muslim countries are included as well. But it's like a third world immigration ban. We don't want anyone from the third world in America. But of course, that kind, he's not including India in that. Indians are still welcome en masse for some reason. Also the Chinese, also some of these other countries. Okay, well, the third world is bigger than these 19 countries. It doesn't seem very consistent. It seems like Donald Trump is trying to do a balancing act between his usual standard pro-immigration attitude. We need more Indians, we need more Chinese in America. But then he also wants to attack Muslims and claim to be this kind of nationalist who hates the Somali garbage. So this is very weird and confusing. What explains his shifting attitude, this Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde approach to immigration? And as some have pointed out, it's because his approval numbers are so low. A lot of Americans that were supporting him, a lot of the MAGA base, has turned on Donald Trump, and his approval ratings are the lowest that they've ever been. And this is a disaster for the Republican Party, because an election is going to be coming up in 2026, the midterm elections, and all indications show that the Republicans are going to get absolutely devastated in these upcoming midterm elections. They're going to lose Congress. They may lose the Senate. And so that's pretty much going to be the end of the Donald Trump presidency, in the sense that anything that he wanted to really push through by having a majority Republican Congress and Senate, that window is fast closing. So he's going to be and have another ineffective term, similar to his first term. So this is bad news for anyone who supports MAGA, any of these Republicans, anyone who had confidence that Donald Trump was going to promise or come through on his promises when it came to immigration and a kind of America First policy for the nation. So what people really care about in the United States, I'm in the US, and the population is really concerned about the economy, the fact that the job market is in the toilet, they can't find jobs, people are graduating or have graduated for many years, they still can't find work, they're living with their parents, they're relying on their boomer parents to support them, and they can't start a family. You have a lot of Americans with families who they can't afford rent anymore. They can't really afford groceries. The price of groceries keeps going up, up, up. And other costs as well. Insurance costs. Because not only do you have your health insurance, you also have car insurance. And car insurance is mandatory. You have to have car insurance, but there's no regulation in most states on the price of car insurance. The insurance companies can just keep jacking up the price without any kind of justification of your car insurance premium. So this is a major cost. There's also taxes. So taxes are at such a high level in the US, not only just income tax. There's plenty of tax breaks for the top 1% in terms of corporate tax cuts, but for the middle class, that there is a huge tax burden in terms of income tax, property taxes, sales taxes. It's just out of control, and the government seems to have no interest in easing this kind of burden on the population. And this is why any kind of politician that comes out and says, well, we're going to ease the burden, we're going to fight these prices, we're going to try to attack inflation. Any politician that talks about affordability of living and quality of life, they win in landslides. And that's what the Democrats are doing. That's what Zohran Mamdani did in New York. His policies aren't even realistic, and it's not even clear how it's going to be more affordable to live in New York when Mamdani starts implementing these policies. Is making the bus fare free to ride the bus or to ride the subway, is that really going to make a dent in this larger problem? This avalanche of cost that people are dealing with is like reducing the bus fare or eliminating the bus or subway fare. Is that really efficacious? Or like setting up these subsidized grocery stores? Like, is that really going to feed the millions in New York? Is that really going to move the needle? It's not clear, but he's still talking about it. He's still signaling the importance of affordability. And the Republicans are not going to be able to compete with that. The Republicans, if they start talking about affordability, well, you're in office. You have the White House, you have Congress, you have Senate, you have basically all three branches of the government. You have a majority in the Supreme Court. Even you have this kind of mandate that the American people gave to you by putting you in office, and the prices haven't reduced. The cost of living has not become more affordable after 1 year of being in office. In fact, things have only spiraled in an out of control way. So if you're going to reduce costs, why didn't you do it? Why didn't you do it over the past year? It's not plausible if they claim it in 2026. And that's why they're going to be really kicked out of office en masse. Trump is saying this. And so he's just doing cheap optics. Let me just appeal to my base by rolling out this nationalist rhetoric, calling brown people, calling Muslims garbage, terrorists, your swaddling hijab, like all of this kind of rhetoric. Because unfortunately, a lot of dumb people fall for it. A lot of dumb people hear that and they say, oh, we're back. You know, this is the MAGA. This is what I voted for. This is MAGA country, baby. Like that's unfortunately the attitude of many Americans. That's why they're constantly being duped. Like they're constantly being duped to support politicians, to participate in elections, to vote in people who ultimately don't care about the average American. You know, that's the sad situation in the high IQ West, in the high IQ country of America. So yeah, that's the context of Donald Trump's remarks on immigration. And what does this mean for Muslims? We're going to talk about it in the show, inshallah. I also am going to react to some clips later in the show. For example, Muhammad Hijab had some statements recently about women and the need for more speakers, female speakers in the dawah. And I'm going to react to those comments. And you don't want to miss that. So that'll be later in the show, inshallah. And I also want to react to one of the videos that Matt Walsh has put out. Matt Walsh is one of these people who, surprisingly, a lot of Muslims actually started following and started promoting. Even though I warned against this, I said that Matt Walsh is a Zionist and he works for Ben Shapiro, the Israeli spy. So we shouldn't really put so much support to, as Muslims, for Matt Walsh. I've been consistent on this. I've criticized Matt Walsh for years. And now people obviously see that he's just a Zionist shill. But more than that, he has really dialed up his anti-Muslim sentiment. He's attacking Muslims in America, saying that these Muslims are a fifth column. We need to deport them. They don't agree with our way of life, etc., etc. He's putting out videos on a consistent basis. So I'm going to react to one of these videos and we're going to analyze it, inshallah, as well later in the show. So a lot to talk about today. Don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter. The link is in the description below. Subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, hit the notification bell so you know whenever we go live. And I'm going to be looking at your super chat. So if you have a comment that you want me to prioritize, leave a super chat. It really helps the show. And yeah, let's get into it. Interesting piece of news that came into my feed. Maybe some of you saw this, that there was a Catholic nun who was stabbed to death by a migrant in Croatia. Okay, this is related to the immigration issue because you have stories like this. A Catholic nun, okay, this is just a Catholic reporter saying that a Catholic nun was stabbed to death, Sister Maria, in the street in a religiously motivated terror attack. If she were a Jewish rabbi or a Muslim imam, her face would be plastered across every mainstream channel and on the front page of every newspaper. But she was a Catholic nun, and just like the genocide of Catholics in Nigeria or the street killings of Christians in Pakistan, the world is turning a blind eye. Where are the headlines? Where are the protests? Where's the outrage? Why are they silent? Ah, yes, because it isn't fashionable to care about Christian lives. Maria deserved better. And if the rest of the world won't do anything, we must step up and speak out for Maria and every Christian life that has been lost for practicing their faith. We must pray for her peace and fight for her justice. Remember Sister Maria. Okay, so this is what was being, this went viral on social media, 2.6 million views. Okay, this Catholic nun was stabbed to death. She's a martyr. She's a martyr for because of these Muslim migrants, these terrorists, religiously motivated terrorism, because that's what Muslims apparently do. They go and stab Catholic nuns. But as it turns out, this was just a hoax, like literally a hoax in every way, for two reasons. Number one, she didn't die. She wasn't stabbed to death. She actually is survived, alive and well, actually. So that's one aspect of the hoax. The second aspect of the hoax, you won't believe, is she stabbed herself. She stabbed herself and reported it as a migrant, a Muslim stabbed her. man, these Catholic nuns are shifty. These are shifty Catholic nuns. And this was reported by the Catholic news agency, no less. Police suspect Croatian nun stabbed herself and falsely reported the attack. Police in Croatia's capital city of Zagreb can suspect that a nun stabbed herself and then falsely reported that she had been attacked. The police department is filing a criminal complaint against the 35-year-old nun. Sister Maria, after a 4-day investigation into the allegations. The initial incident made national headlines, with many people first speculating it was a religiously motivated attack. According to the report, the sister, I don't know how to pronounce that, Zorna told police that an unknown perpetrator approached her with a knife and stabbed her, after which she was treated at the Sisters of Charity Hospital for minor injuries. So she was never even close to death. I don't know why she was being called a martyr. So she had minor injuries. However, police allege their investigation confirmed that Zorna purchased the weapon herself at a store. The police allege that their investigation determined that she inflicted the injury on herself. So she falsely reported the criminal offense with the intent of misleading police, despite being aware that filing a false report carries a penalty. The Archdiocese of Zagreb and the Episcopal Conference of Croatia, which represents the country's Catholic bishops, did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Well, they should comment, because their nuns are going wild. These nuns are out of control. They're going to stores to buy knives, and then they're stabbing themselves. So this is quite hilarious. Well, good on the media. Look, an initial speculation on social media and some media reports asserted that unnamed sources had claimed an attacker was a migrant who shouted Allahu Akbar during the stabbing. That always has to be there. The Allahu Akbar. Whenever a Muslim picks up a knife, I just have the urge to say Allahu Akbar while stabbing. That's the trope, right? So what about other Muslim expressions? Like, we have more than just Allahu Akbar. Like, what about Alhamdulillah? Alhamdulillah with the stabbing. No, it's always Allahu Akbar. Like, we have more dhikr, we have more statements of praising Allah than just Allahu Akbar. Okay, you need to diversify. If you want these false flags to be convincing, you need to switch up the script a little bit. Do a little bit of research. This Allahu Akbar, this line has been used for 2 decades now. You need to switch it up. It's apparently Muslims only know one thing to say when they're stabbing. When they're involved in a stabbing, they can only say one thing. So yeah, this is Catholicism, apparently. No, I'm joking. Catholics are not all like this. This is more like the behavior of another religious demographic, ethno-religious demographic. False flags are not really a Catholic thing. That was the Catholic nun's first problem. She thought she could do what other ethno religions do. And I'm not going to say which ethno religion. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say which ethno religion does all these false flags and literally, draws swastikas on their synagogues and, bombs places and well dressed up as Arabs. I'm not going to say which ethno religion, which religious group. Okay, they're Jews, but this Catholic nun thought she could pull it off, but she needs to get some tips. She needs to go to Tel Aviv and get some tips on how to be more effective. Maybe don't go and buy a knife. The weapon in the knife attack, don't go and buy it the day before. And maybe don't use a credit card or something that can be traced to you. Just some tips. Just some little tips that I can give you. Okay, so let's I thought it was funny. Let's go to the immigration. Oh, I made another comment, by the way, on this. I said that this was a microcosm. the Christians stabbing themselves in order to get Muslims in trouble. Like, this is a microcosm of the entire Christian approach to Muslims when it comes to debate, when it comes to online apologetics, because all of the arguments that these Christian apologists use against Muslims, they apply twice as much to their own religion, to Christianity. So whenever they try to make an argument to own the Muslims, for example, they say that, oh, Islam doesn't allow LGBT. Islam is anti-LGBT rights. You know, this was a big line that Christians used for many years before LGBT fell out of fashion. Well, what does your Bible say about homosexuality and a man lying with another man? Like, what does your Bible, doesn't it prescribe the death penalty for that? So you have a problem with Islam, but look at what your Bible is saying. So all of these arguments are, oh, Islam endorses conquest. Okay, well, so does your Bible. So does the Islam prescribes slavery. This is why Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a warlord. Okay, well, look at Moses in your Bible. Like, look at the Mosaic law that Jesus, you believe God prescribed the Mosaic law. Well, you believe that Jesus is God. So Jesus is prescribing genocide and slavery and even sex slavery. So all their arguments are a self-own. Like, they try to own the Muslims and they end up sabotaging themselves. And the most recent example, I keep going back and forth with this guy capturing Christianity. And I keep ratioing him. It's quite humiliating for him. And I challenge him to debate. He refuses to debate me. He refuses to debate. He has a popular YouTube channel. So here, like, he's trying to farm likes on social media, on Twitter. He's trying to farm likes because he wants to ride this wave of anti-Muslim sentiment, this kind of Israeli-funded psyop to depict Islam as evil and barbaric as possible, to drive a wedge between Christians and Muslims. So he's trying to ride that wave, and he puts these really dumb posts out. He says, you may not know this, but Muslims believe that Abraham built the Kaaba. Yes, Abraham. The only problem is that there's not a shred of evidence for the view. He says confidently. So I responded. I said that, look, there isn't a shred of archaeological evidence that Abraham or the vast majority of Old Testament figures even existed. So this is a self-own. Like, what kind of evidence are you saying that the Islamic narrative lacks that the Christian narrative or the biblical narrative has? This is a self-own. This is just out of your ignorance. So I point this out, and there's the ratio of capturing Christianity, but he hasn't had enough. He has to keep talking, keep yapping. He says that the only response to this from Muslims so far is, quote, but we don't have any evidence for Abraham at all. First, if that's your view, then why do you believe he built the Kaaba? Second, it's categorically false that we have no evidence for Abraham. That's one thing about Christianity. We have actual evidence for our religion. And then you expect him to post the evidence, and there's nothing that he posts as evidence that Abraham actually existed. So I point out to him, in this simple post, again, like brutal ratio, and I tell him, look, what do you mean by evidence? Like, what do you mean evidence for Abraham, that Abraham existed? Muslims believe in Abraham. We believe that he built the Kaaba because of the Quran, because of revelation, because of what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Prophet Muhammad, informed us of Abraham. That's what our belief in Abraham is based on. And if a Muslim says that, oh, we have archaeological evidence for Abraham, that is false. That what archaeological evidence is there that you can establish that is accepted by peer review, non-Muslim peer review? What is there? What study has been done to establish that? We don't need to appeal. We don't appeal to a non-Islamic source to justify that particular belief. For example, Isra and Mi'raj, the fact that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam went to in the night journey, went to Jerusalem. Okay, went to Quds. in a night, in less than a night, and then returned, and then did the Mi'raj, ascended through the seven heavens. What evidence is there? What archaeological evidence, what scientific evidence is there of that? There is none. There is none. That's something that we believe because we believe Islam. And that doesn't mean that we blindly believe Islam. No, we have good reasons. We have good evidence to believe in Islam. We have good evidence to accept that the Quran is true, that the Prophet ﷺ is a true prophet and messenger of God. Like, we have good evidence for all of that. That's why we, in terms of dawah, this is what we debate with atheists. I've had debates with the top atheists. I've had a whole series on the genius of Islam, like giving evidence for why you should believe in Islam. But when it comes to the specifics of the Quran or specific prophetic events like Moses parting the sea, is there any kind of independent evidence to confirm that? No, there really isn't. There isn't a scientific study. There isn't an archaeological dig for those. There is evidence for things like the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as a real person existing and having the seerah, making hijrah from Mecca to Medina, and many details of the Prophet ﷺ's life. Those things are actually verified by independent non-Muslim historians, and this is a vast field in Islamic studies. And that's the kind of historical information that I bring to my debates, for example, with Jafed, if you remember, the debate on traditionalism versus modernism, Islamic traditionalism versus Islamic modernism. That debate focused a lot about historical evidence. So there are some things that we do have historical evidence for, and other things we don't have historical, archaeological, or scientific evidence for. That doesn't mean we don't believe it. We believe it on the basis of the Quran and Sunnah, and on the power or the epistemological power of the Quran and Sunnah, that we accept these details. Okay, that is very consistent, logical, and many Christians have a similar view of their Bible. They have a similar view. I generally believe in the Bible. I generally believe in Jesus Christ and Christianity. And so I accept the contents of the Bible in specific on the basis of that belief, not on the basis of some kind of independent study, not on the basis of some kind of independent non-Christian source. Like, Christians have a very similar epistemology. So it's just baffling that someone like a Christian apologist, like capturing Christianity, doesn't understand that. Like, conceptually, he doesn't get that. And so he would go out of his way to attack some Islamic belief about Abraham, no less, when he's on just the same exact kind of ground, the same kind of grounding as Muslims. So, so I point this out. You have, what do you mean by evidence? Do you mean archaeological evidence? If so, your attack on Islamic claims about Abraham apply equally to biblical claims about him, because there's no archaeological evidence that support the claim that Abraham was even a real person, let alone the specific details mentioned in the Bible. So your entire criticism against Islam refutes your own religion. So, that's this is the sad state of Christian apologetics. A lot of Christian apologetics is being led by uneducated people. Like, they have a very the most knowledgeable about Islam. Like, some of these figures who are very knowledgeable about Islam. Not this guy, not capturing Christianity. I don't think he has much knowledge about anything really. But others, you can tell, they've at least read the Quran. They're very familiar with Hadith. They know a lot of the tafsir. They know a lot of the seerah. And they've clearly studied, but they don't have a broader educational base. They don't have a strong grounding in philosophy or intellectual history or anthropology. And that shows. That really shows, because in these kinds of debates and these kinds of discussions. Just wanted to point that out. So my debate challenge is still open to this guy, but I don't think he'll accept it. I think that he is quite scared to confront me in a debate. Okay, let's get to Mr. Donald Trump. Okay, let's listen to what Trump has to say. Big Orange Man, as he was known. Used to be known. Now the media loves him. The mainstream media can't say much bad about him because he really is a friend of Israel. Best friend of Israel, so. Let's play this.
We could go one way or the other, and we're going to go the wrong way if we keep taking in garbage into our country. Ilhan Omar is garbage. She's garbage. Her friends are garbage. These aren't people that work. These aren't people that say, let's go, come on, let's make this place great. These are people that do nothing but complain. They complain. And from where they came from, they got nothing. You know, they came from paradise, and they said, this isn't paradise. But when they come from hell, and they complain and do nothing but bitch, we don't want them in our country. Let them go back to where they came from and fix it. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody.
So, strong words. Let them go back to where they came from. They're coming from hell. They're coming from hell, and if they were coming from heaven, they could say, yeah, this is not heaven. America is not heaven. America has all these problems. But they're coming from hell, and they have all these complaints. All they do is complain and whine, and they're garbage. He specifically calls out Ilhan Omar. So what does Ilhan Omar say to this? She was also interviewed.
Well, thank you, Anna, for having me. I would say the president's obsession with me and the Somali community is really unhealthy. It's creepy. And I hope that he gets the help that he needs. It sounds like he is trying to deflect from the failures that he's had as president. His immigration rates are not going in the way that he's expected. We know that the tariffs are not working to make life affordable for Americans. We know that he is afraid of what is in the Epstein files, as he's fought to be the head of the pedophile protection party. And we know that right now he is being investigated for war crimes that he might have committed when he ordered what seems to be illegal attacks against boats in the Caribbean. Well, thank you, Anna, for having me.
So this is Ilhan Omar's response. And, you know, it's not a good response. It's not a good response because it dodges the main issue. It dodges what Donald Trump, the kind of sentiment that he's representing. He's appealing to his base, and he's appealing to a increasingly larger demographic of Americans who are not just even Republicans, even some who are on the left, those who are centrists and those who are on the left. Because as I mentioned, the American public, the number one concern that they have is the economy. And the economy and the lack of jobs, they can't really afford to live. And whenever a country is going through economic downturn, that's exactly when anti-immigration sentiment or just nationalist, populist sentiment, that's when it really starts to bubble up and even boil over. It becomes a very volatile situation. It becomes very dangerous to people who are not the dominant majority of the population. So, Ilhan Omar describes Trump as being insane. Like, it seems like he's obsessed. He has this kind of obsession, and it represents a psychological problem that Donald Trump has. And so by proxy, she's calling all these Americans who do have these concerns. They're worried about bringing food for their families. They're worried about paying rent, keeping the lights on. And they do see that, well, there are these immigrant communities, including Somalis, Hispanics, and others, Chinese even, that they are using this American services. Indians who are getting jobs. They're getting these high-tech jobs instead of the American-born. So this is creating resentment This is creating anxiety. This is creating kind of nationalistic sentiment and some xenophobia. And you don't address that by saying, oh, you're crazy. You're crazy. You're just trying to cover for your obsession. You're just obsessed. Like, this is a completely tone deaf response. And it's also, it's a failing strategy. It's a failing. Ilhan Omar by May. Can you guys not hear my volume? Someone is saying I need to increase my volume. Is the volume okay? My levels look fine on my side. Are you talking about the volume of Ilhan Omar and Trump, the videos that I played? Fortunately, I can't raise the volume of that, because the video that they were playing is that's like the max volume for the video, unfortunately. So yeah, hopefully the Matt Walsh video will be louder. Anyway, so as I was saying, people have this kind of anxiety, and you're not going to get rid of that anxiety by calling them crazy. Okay, so Ilhan Omar rose to her position of prominence back in 2018 in Donald Trump's first term, and it was using this kind of far left progressive rhetoric. What does Ilhan Omar, what is her political platform based on? It's based on appealing to LGBT, like the most extreme iteration of LGBT. She's like going to the pride marches. She's like having photo ops with the transgender. Okay, so the most extreme form of that. She is appealing to diversity. She's appealing to migration, mass immigration, just open borders. So these are like far left values. And those values are now in the toilet. You know, that even the few Americans who were in support of that in the past, it's no longer something that appeals to any sizable group of Americans. Only the far left, the most far left. And that rhetoric is going to alienate everyone else. It's going to not only alienate, it's going to anger them. It's going to make them angry. It's going to make them hate Muslims more. It's going to make them hate Somalis more. And so I wonder where, like, Ilhan Omar is getting the advice. Like, where is she getting these kinds of talking points? I think it has to do with, maybe she has a lot of Jewish advisors. Her husband is literally Jewish, and this is the kind of attitude, or this is the kind of entitlement that we find from that demographic, that we own the place, we belong here, this is our country, how dare you, how dare you say that we have to care for you as a majority? Like, we are entitled to America just as much as Americans are. This is the kind of attitude and entitlement that we see from a lot of Jewish Americans, the Jewish community. Even Jewish Israelis feel entitled to America and American money, American aid. Even Jewish Israelis have that sentiment. And when I see Ilhan Omar, I see someone who looks like a Somali and dresses, somewhat like a Muslim woman, but she has the political vision and the entitlement of, a far left progressive Jew. and that's really, I think, not a winning attitude to have, because you're not Jewish. You don't have that backing. You don't have that power. You don't have the billionaires who are going to support you in that same way. And your people, the Somalis or the Muslims, they haven't been in America as long as the Jewish community has. So those talking points and that attitude and that entitlement is going to fall flat. And in fact, it's going to be counterproductive. Now, someone like Zohran Mamdani, he also uses this kind of far left narrative, appealing to progressive values. He does go to the LGBT pride parades. He does take pictures with them. He does appeal to open borders, etc. But Zohran also has the sense to come to the White House and talk to President Trump and do a photo op and shake his hand and talk to him. Right? Didn't you see that from last week? Mamdani was in the White House. So Mamdani seems to have a little bit more political acumen than Ilhan Omar, and he realized that things have changed. Also, Mamdani is serving as mayor for the most progressive left-wing place in the United States, which is New York City. It's in New York City. That's different from Ilhan Omar. Ilhan Omar is in Minnesota. Okay, Minnesota is not they tend to be Democrat, but they're not as far left as Ilhan Omar is. So how can she justify like this kind of attitude that she has and her appeal to the furthest left of progressive politics? It's creating, and you saw her response, it's creating even more animosity in the majority population against Muslims, against Muslim women, against Somalis. Like, this is really a bad approach, and she needs to get in the year 2026. She's still living in 2016, and she has the same attitude. And I'm not saying that everything that she says is incorrect. Obviously, she is going to push back against the Israeli lobby to a certain extent, even if it is performative in many ways, because over her career, she's signed on to many pro-Israeli legislation, like literally signing arms deals, military aid deals to Israel. She has voted for that in her history in Congress. But at least, she has some critiques against the Israeli lobby. Okay, fine, fair enough. But overall, overarching, like, she is creating more hate for Muslims, more hate for immigrants, because she's tone deaf. And when you look at the seerah, actually, when you look at the history of Muslims in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, you had a group of the Sahaba that migrated to Habasha, to Eastern Africa, Ethiopia region, Abyssinia region. The Muslims had to appeal to the king, Najashi, who is a Christian. They had to appeal to him in order to be safe and to live as migrants from Arabia, as Muslims. And how did they do that? Did they say that they were entitled to be there? And they're entitled to Najashi providing them protection? Were they entitled to Najashi protecting them from the Quraysh? Because you had the Quraysh. You had, for example, Amr ibn al-As, who came as a representative of the Quraysh before he had become Muslim, who came to negotiate with Najashi and say, give us these Muslims. Let us take these Muslims, because they wanted to block the Muslims from leaving, and they wanted to, continue their subjugation and kill the Muslims. So that the Quraysh followed the Muslims, the Sahaba, to Abyssinia, to Habasha, and he's trying to convince Najashi to give up the Muslims. And the Muslims, for example, Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, one of the Sahaba, what did he do? He talked to Najashi. He recited verses of the Quran, specifically Surah Maryam from the Quran, because he knew Najashi is a Christian. And Najashi was so moved by these verses of the Quran that's what compelled him, or that's what convinced him to protect the Muslims and say, you're safe with us. You're safe. And no, I'm not going to give these Muslims to the Quraysh. I'm going to protect them. Like, that was Najashi's stance. And Najashi, obviously, we know secretly he later became Muslim. But the point is that Ja'far came to Najashi with this message of, look at our common beliefs. Look at our common beliefs and appeal to those values. Someone like Ilhan Omar is appealing to a bunch of progressive, far left values that are not representative of the stock, if you want to say founding stock of the United States, of this country. They are Christian. They do have this Christian heritage, and they do have all these kinds of Christian values. Like, why don't you try appealing to that instead of spitting on that? Instead of spitting and calling them crazy, calling them psychos. Like, this is completely backwards, her approach, and it's contrary to Islamic standards. It's contrary to like an Islamic approach. My approach has been, like, if you remember, I have said that, look, I prefer Christianity. I prefer a Christian society as opposed to an atheist liberal society. An atheist liberal society is destruction of religion, destruction of tradition and family and belief in God. So I don't want that. I actually prefer a traditional Christian society. Those values are compatible with Islamic values. That's how I've been able to appeal and speak to Christians. And we have a lot of Christians who are fans of MuslimSkeptic. And when I had this kind of message for Patrick Bet-David, you saw how he responded. Patrick Bet-David also was on board. Fortunately, he was hijacked by a certain other ethno-religious demographic. I'm not going to say who. I'm not going to say who they are. But, post October 7th. But you see the appeal of that kind of approach, as opposed to, as a Muslim, I'm going to become like a hardcore progressive Democrat, and I'm going to hope that people are going to, the American people are going to accept me with open arms, while I'm actively antagonizing them, while I'm actively promoting an ideology that is anti-family, anti-marriage, anti-children. Like, that's the big backlash that happened against LGBT eventually. Like, why we saw the heyday of LGBT from 2016 to 2020, let's say, why that was the heyday and then they were crushed is because of their targeting children. Like, we're going to go into the schools and we're going to promote transgenderism with children, and we're even going to target children for hormone blockers and transgender or gender affirming care in the elementary schools. Like, that was the bridge too far. And it created this massive backlash because people ultimately don't want that. They saw where this is going to lead. Like, if we continue to tolerate this, this is going to get worse and worse and worse. So there's backlash. Fortunately, Muslims were not on that train, even though our religion should have told us, when we see what happened to the people of Lot, Qawm Lut, in the Quran and the punishment, we should have had the guidance there and the foresight to understand what will happen to society if you tolerate this behavior and you support gay marriage and you support the idea, what two men do in the privacy of their bedroom that's their own business. Like, if you tolerate that, it's never going to stay in their own bedroom. It's going to leak into society and it's going to get worse and worse and worse. And that's the message of Qawm Lut and the destruction of that people. That's the message of the Quran. Muslims had that guidance. But why are we not leading the charge? Because it would be politically incorrect and there would be backlash and you would have problems. But we know that that's what the people themselves, because they're also the creation of Allah, people, even if they're non-Muslims, they still have the fitrah. They still understand what is right and wrong. We could have appealed to that. We could have appealed to their Christian values. We could have appealed to the traditional values of marriage and family and heterosexuality. But unfortunately, our quote-unquote leadership was not interested in that. Our leadership was interested in advancing their careers and going to Democratic National Convention, getting the pat on the back from Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, and going and speaking at their rallies. Like, that's what our quote-unquote leaders, the compassionate imams and the dawah mafia, that's what they were interested in. So instead of appealing to those values, they appeal to LGBT, they appeal to migration, things that are just progressive Jewish values and political vision. That's what happens, that's what happens. You think that it's just Washington that's Zionist occupied. You think that it's just, these international institutions like the UN that's Zionist occupied. No, even our dawah mafia is Zionist occupied. I don't know if you haven't realized this yet, but it's the truth. Okay, so that is my commentary on Donald Trump. And let me see if there's anything else I want to say about that. Yeah, so I mean, just because we appeal to the American people on these traditional values, that doesn't mean we don't have a critique of colonialism, Western liberal colonialism in the Muslim world, these wars, constant wars in the Middle East. Of course, we have our critiques, and those are the debates that I've had, for example, with Keith Woods, or the kind of back and forth with Nick Fuentes and some of these other nationalists, whether they're Christian nationalists or white nationalists. We have a critique of that system. But we should make sure our critique is based on Islam, Islamic values, and not contradictory to Islamic values. The idea that Muslims are entitled wherever they are to live wherever they want, and America belongs just as much to Somalia or just as much to, I don't know, Kazakhstan or Bangladesh as it does to Americans, like that's not coming from Islam. Like that's not an Islamic value in the sense that you go and tell, like, and if that were the case, like, why didn't the Sahaba, when they went to Najashi, say that, hey, we're entitled to be here, we're entitled, this is our land just as much as it is your land, so move aside, and if you don't like it, you're racist and you have some kind of mental issue. Like, that's not what they said to Najashi. That's not the message that they had. So then why are Muslims kind of parroting this kind of attitude? It's counterproductive, but at the same time, you can, there is a point to say that Najashi at that time wasn't bombing Muslims. Najashi wasn't bombing Muslims in the same way that the United States is bombing Muslim countries. So I'm not saying that there's not a critique that should not be made. There is a critique that we should make against American imperialism and colonialism, but it should just be on the basis of Muslim values, Islamic values, not on the basis of this kind of far left progressive message. That's the problem that I have with a lot of these Muslim politicians. They can't articulate an authentic Islamic alternative message. They just have to cozy up, align themselves with the progressive left, because they're weak. They're weak, and they have no spine, and they can't stand on their own. And that's a shame. That's a problem. Okie dokie. Let's look at... Okay, so I want to react to Matt Walsh. But before I do that, let me see. Yeah, let's react to Matt Walsh. Because he's one of the ones who's really pushing anti-Muslim attitudes and being very explicit, like, just get them out, we're going to deport you all. So let's listen to what he has to say. The good news is Matt Walsh is increasingly irrelevant. Like, his YouTube channel doesn't seem to be getting the same traction. His videos aren't getting the same traction. So I was hesitant about doing this reaction, because why make him more relevant than he is? As if he has something important or unique to say. But I think it's just useful as an exercise to address some of these talking points, because it's not just Matt Walsh. You see others are adopting these points, so we should respond. And I'm going to respond, again, not using the progressive left's ideology. I'm going to respond from a Islamic stance, inshallah.
Last week, when we talked about the situation in Dearborn, Michigan, which has become, as we discussed, essentially a Middle Eastern Islamic capital right in the middle of the American heartland. And there's another video I want to play, which again highlights this problem. But before I do, I want to respond to a few things, because there's a lot of reaction to my segment last week, which now has like 600,000 views on YouTube and 16,000 comments, and however many million more views on X, and a lot of comments. Obviously strikes a chord, not always a positive chord. Lots of people are very upset with me. And two major themes emerged in the critical comments. The biggest theme, as you would expect, is that I'm racist and I'm xenophobic and I'm Islamophobic and on and on and on. And look, if that's what you think, if that's the way you see it, I don't care. I'm not going to sit here and desperately try to convince you otherwise. I just don't care. I don't care that you think that of me. So if you are, and I know when I say that, people will say, well, how could you? You're just going to let people, you're not going to, you're okay with people saying that? Yeah, they're going to say what they're going to say. If that's what you think of me, I don't care. I don't care that you think that of me. I'm not going to bother to try to disprove. Oh, no, please don't. Please don't say that. What do I have to do to prove to you that I'm not xenophobic? I'm not doing that. Doesn't matter to me. That's fine. You can go ahead and say that. I especially don't care because you're all a bunch of hypocrites and liars. All of you. All the people having a hissy fit over my commentary on this issue. You're all full of crap. Every single one of you. And you know it.
Yeah, so he's giving this tough guy look like, I don't care. Call me all the names you want. Call me racist. I'm just invincible to that kind of criticism. I'm just so tough. And a lot of people will notice that, yeah, you can mock Muslims, you can call for their deportation, you can criticize Islam, you can criticize black people, which he does, you can criticize Hispanic people, which he does. You can criticize these groups because these groups don't have significant power. These groups don't have significant power at this moment to actually show you any consequences for your antagonism and your aggression. So it's not actually very brave. It's not actually very courageous of you to criticize groups that have relatively little or no power. If you want to be brave, criticize those groups and those people who do have power, who can come for you, that can actually hit your bottom line when it comes to your money, when it comes to your income with your show, when it comes to your freedom. They can actually put you in prison. Like, they can actually, like, why don't you have this kind of criticism or critical commentary about Jews, about the Jewish community in America, for example, as we'll see. Or even when it comes to other topics like women, criticizing feminism in a way that actually has an impact on feminism, not this kind of soy criticism of feminism that Matt Walsh has, like, oh, you know, a man is a man and a woman is woman, and the left can't even define what a woman is. And yeah, we like our women to be in the kitchen. Okay, Matt Walsh, are you willing to say something like women shouldn't be educated? Are you willing to say something like women shouldn't have power? Are you willing to say something like women shouldn't have the right to vote? Are you willing to say things like that? Maybe, I don't know. But it seems like you tiptoe around those issues. But when it comes to brown people, when it comes to Muslims, you go full blast. And then you puff out your chest and you say, oh, I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid of these people being called xenophobic and racist. Or what about attacking some of these cherished symbols of American identity that now we know are quite problematic if you look at the World War II narrative. All of the historical information that has come out, so-called conspiracy theories that have turned out to be conspiracy facts about World War II, about the CIA involvement in the JFK assassination, the involvement of different intelligence agencies with 9/11, like these kinds of things that are going to go contrary to the power structure within the U.S. government, within the U.S. Why don't you come out in a strong way? You know, for all the criticism that we can give Tucker Carlson, at least Tucker Carlson is willing to criticize Israel. He's willing to open up this narrative of maybe JFK was actually assassinated by these intelligence agencies in collaboration with the CIA, in collaboration with Mossad. Maybe we need to look at the or reinvestigate 9/11. Tucker Carlson is actually willing to go against these power structures, and that's why he's constantly being attacked. Tucker Carlson, the mainstream media has turned against him. First of all, he lost his position at Fox News, but even today we see a massive media effort to portray Tucker Carlson as a Nazi, as an anti-Semite. That's the cost that Tucker Carlson is willing to pay to actually challenge some of these narratives that implicate Israel, implicate the United States power structure, implicate the Jewish oligarchy. But you're not brave, Matt Walsh, for talking about Muslims or talking about Hispanics. Like, that's not courageous at all. You're a sycophant.
You tell me that I should embrace and celebrate the fact that American cities are being Islamicized. I should celebrate when American cities are taken over by Arab immigrants. And next thing you know, they're blasting the call to prayer at 5:30 in the morning and renaming streets after Muslims. And the Muslim mayor is telling Christian citizens they aren't welcome in the city and all the rest of it. You think I should celebrate that?
What Muslim mayor told Christian citizens that you're not welcome in the city? This is something that he just made up. Yeah, where are the receipts? The Muslim mayor told Christians that you're not welcome in our city. I need proof of that, because it sounds like he just made that up. Like, this is like the Christian nun saying that a Muslim migrant, attacked her and shouted Allahu Akbar. Like, that's the level of claim that we're dealing with here with Matt Walsh, who also is a Catholic, by the way. And also the Muslim takeover of American cities. Like, this is a complete bizarre exaggeration that has no basis in reality. The Muslim population in the United States is very small. We're talking about 1 to 2%. 2% might be an overestimate. It's somewhere in between. And what he's talking about specifically was talking about Dearborn, Michigan. Dearborn, Michigan is just a part of Detroit, the greater Detroit metropolitan area. Detroit is one of these big cities, like New York, like Chicago, like Los Angeles, like Houston, like Dallas, and like all of these major cities in America. There are different enclaves that different migrant groups, immigrant groups coalesce around. That's why there's always, if you go to New York or even Boston or even Houston, there's a Chinese Chinatown, like an area where you have a lot of Chinese, and you'll go and the stores there'll be no English signage for those stores. It'll be in Chinese, in Mandarin, for example. Or even in a city like Houston. Houston is like the 4th largest city in America. You have a Vietnamese district or a Vietnamese area, and literally the street signs are in Vietnamese. So this is common. Like, this is commonplace in America, where you'll have different subdivisions or suburbs where there'll be a concentration of one particular ethnic group. And a lot of immigrants will go, when they come into the country, they'll go and live in those in those communities. And that's why those communities get larger over time. So it's not something specific to Muslims. Imagine if I said that, oh, there's Chinatown in New York. That means the Chinese are taking over New York. That would be a ridiculous thing to say. But this is the kind of image that Matt Walsh wants to portray, is that Muslims are just like conquering Detroit and, placing the flag of the Khilafah in Detroit. That's not happening.
Or at least accept it. Well, here's what I know. And it's what you know. And you know that I know it, which is that if the exact same thing were happening in an Arab country, none of you would be celebrating it. None of you would be embracing that in the way that you want me to embrace this, the way that you want all of us to embrace this. If Islamic culture and tradition were being pushed out of a Muslim country in favor of white Christians who were moving in and Christianizing and westernizing the place, you would say that it was colonialism, it's imperialism, it's white supremacy, and all the rest of it. If there's any Arabic country, if there's any Middle Eastern country that over time became significantly less Islamic and more Western and more Christian, you would openly lament that fact with no shame or embarrassment. You would see it as like self-evident that that is a bad thing, because you believe that Islamic countries have the right to preserve and protect their heritage and their culture. But you think that my country, that America, has no such right. And that's why your opinion is less than worthless to me. Your opinion is is laying on the ground, as far as I'm concerned. Doesn't mean anything to me.
But that's exactly what's happening. Like, when he's talking about Muslim countries, Muslim lands being invaded, like, that is literally what is happening. That is literally what is happening. Even look at the case of Palestine. Okay, what happened with Palestine? The population transfer of all these Jews from Europe and Russia into into Palestine, pushing out the Palestinians, that was done with the facilitation of the West, with the facilitation of the British and then the United States, that have allowed this mass of Jews to go into Palestine and replace the Palestinian population by killing them, by genociding them, and by ethnically cleansing them, forcing them into other countries. Okay, so that's that. Do you take any responsibility for that, Matt Walsh, before you want to complain about Muslims? Like, that has been happening way before there was Dearborn, Michigan with a majority Arab population. That is something that predates Dearborn, Michigan having majority Arab or Muslim population. And then just look at imperialism in the Muslim world generally. Look at how many bases, military bases, are peppering the Muslim world. This is occupation of Muslim lands by a potentially hostile foreign force, the United States. Okay, this is something that is there, and Matt Walsh might say that, oh, well, I'm a non-interventionist. Okay, are you truly a non-interventionist? Because you are yapping a whole lot more about brown people than you are about closing down all of these military bases and the end of U.S. hegemony. In fact, in other places, as we'll see, in other times, you say that, well, might makes right, and the fact that that the U.S. has dominated and has wiped out the Native Americans, for example, and established that superiority over the world, well, that's justified by itself. The might, our victory justifies itself. So this is the kind of game that these Christian nationalists play. They want to appeal to a sense of equality, like, oh, well, Muslims don't care if they replace us in our country, but they would be so upset if we did the same to them. This is hypocritical, and why can't whites have their own country just like these Muslims have their own countries? Where's the equality? So he plays this equality line when it's convenient for him. And then when he's pressed on the fact that there is this massive white hegemony, white American hegemony that has been dominating the globe and preventing sovereignty and self-determination of all of these brown people and all of these Muslims, then he appeals to, well, might makes right. You know, we won, you lost. Stop crying about it. Stop whining about it. This is the fundamental inconsistency with these Christian nationalists and these white nationalists. They want to have their cake and they want to eat it too. Also, it should be noted that the Christian population is steadily declining in some of these Muslim Middle Eastern countries, but Christians are actually exploding when it comes to the Gulf countries. So this is mass migration into a Muslim country, and let me show you the chart on this. I'll pull it up. One second. This is from the World Religion database as cited by The Economist. And you can see, let's increase the size. So you can see the Christian population decreasing in Syria or in Egypt or Palestine. I mean, that's everyone. The population of everyone is decreasing. It's not just Christians. Israel also, you see a decline. Okay, so these Zionists who want to say that, oh, Israel is a safe haven for the Christians. No, the Christian population in Israel is also declining. But look at Saudi, look at UAE. This has been since 1975, just a massive uptick, a massive increase in the Christian population in those countries. That's mass migration, because the Christians, the Westerners, are coming to the Muslim countries and they're bringing a lot of their culture, and they are demanding that, well, we need to have bars, We need alcohol. We need prostitution. Like these kinds of values. We need rock concerts. We need like part of the liberalization that's happening in the Gulf is to cater to this massive influx of Christians and Jews. So this is not something that's just one-sided. Muslims coming to the West. There is a comparable phenomenon happening in the Muslim world. And even if it's not actual migration, it's still all this intervention. It's all these military bases. It's nonstop wars, creating a refugee crisis, tens of millions of refugees. But Matt Walsh doesn't have a tear to shed for those problems.
I mean, just to show you how absurd this is, okay? Just to show you. There's a guy who responded to me on X. He posted this. Judging leaders by their religion, not their merit, isn't patriotism. It's bigotry. America thrives on diversity, not fear. Now, the guy who posted this is named Mansoor Ahmed Qureshi, and he lives in Pakistan. So number one, we have a guy who doesn't even live in this country trying to tell us what makes America thrive. We got a foreigner in a country thousands of miles away trying to tell me, an actual American, about America. And there's a lot of this going on, right? A lot of the accounts that you see, especially on social media, saying, let me tell you about America. Let me tell you what America's really about. Oh, you don't understand America. So many of that commentary is coming from people who've never even stepped foot in this country. They're 7,000 miles away, like pontificating. I think I know what America is really about. The gall, the arrogance.
The gall, the arrogance. Oh. Is there like a problem with Matt Walsh that he can't like just continuously look into the camera? Like he just has this shifty gaze sometimes. He reminds me of Shahid Bolson sometimes. Like he just has this shifty gaze. It's like I think it's something that is characteristic of people who are being paid. Like they know that what they're saying is not true. It's not authentic. It's just talking points that they're paid to give. That's what Shahid Bolson is all about. And it looks like Matt Walsh, you can tell, like he's a shill for Israel. He's being paid by Ben Shapiro, a literal spy for the Israeli government. So he wants to complain about a foreigner telling Americans what to do. Yet he works for Ben Shapiro, who works for Benjamin Netanyahu, and Ben Shapiro and Daily Wire are telling Americans what to do. So imagine this hypocrisy. Like he has a problem with this random Pakistani or whoever with no power, someone with just a Twitter account, and he wants to make a big deal. Like, how dare this brown foreigner tell us Americans what to do and how to live our lives? How dare he? You work for the Daily Wire. You work for Ben Shapiro and Benjamin Netanyahu by proxy. And Benjamin Netanyahu is constantly coming to the U.S. and telling Americans what to do. It's literally coming into Congress. Like when Benjamin Netanyahu gave that address, he gave that speech earlier in 2025 to Congress, and there was like a standing ovation every other sentence. The highest number of standing ovations ever by any speech given in Congress is given to Benjamin Netanyahu. Matt Walsh was in the audience. Matt Walsh was there watching that speech and also standing and clapping like a good little puppy along with his boss, Ben Shapiro. They were there. They were in attendance. Netanyahu was telling you what to do with your country, and all of your representatives, your elected officials, were eating from his hand like little dogs, like little puppies. And you have no problem with that. You had no complaint about that. But if a brown person on Twitter steps out of line and has an opinion about America, how dare they try to tell us what to do? So this is just so performative and idiotic, ridiculous, like it's beyond parody. Netanyahu is telling Americans, hey, you need to expedite the aid that you're giving us. You need to expedite the weapons that you're giving us for our wars. And hey, you need to go and attack Iran. You need to go and bomb Iran. You need to get into a completely new Middle Eastern war and dedicate your people to pay the price for that war, the trillions of dollars in cost for that war. And by the way, you need to shut down any kind of protest against this Any kind of anti-Israel criticism, you have to shut it down. You have to literally change your legal system, add laws that contradict your First Amendment, the First Amendment of your Constitution, to shut down speech on campuses or any so-called anti-Semitism on social media or elsewhere. All of these things are being demanded by a foreigner. A foreigner, Benjamin Netanyahu, is dictating to Donald Trump, dictating to Congress, dictating to in the halls of power. Matt Walsh, instead of being focused on that or even commenting or criticizing on that, oh, there's a Pakistani or a Indian on Twitter who has an opinion about America. That's the problem.
That I would never do in the other way. I would never say to somebody in Pakistan, let me tell you what Pakistan's really about. Oh, that's not. I would never hear someone in Pakistan like giving their opinion about something, and then I say, well, that's not consistent with Pakistani values. What the hell do I know about Pakistan? And why would I care? Like, that's your culture. You can do whatever you want with it. And also, you live in Pakistan. How much diversity and tolerance do they have in Pakistan, Ahmed? How's it going over there with the diversity and the tolerance, huh? How's your anti-bigotry campaigning going over there? How's that landing?
Like, Matt Walsh is so uninformed. He doesn't realize that there is literally millions of dollars that the U.S. Spends to fund NGOs and these different groups that go to Pakistan or go to the Muslim world to spread diversity. Except it's like the worst kind of diversity. It's like the kind of diversity where we have to, as Muslims, tolerate LGBT. For example, the Aurat March in Pakistan. Don't you remember that the United States Congress designated $10 million or even more for gender programs, like gender education programs in Pakistan? Like, this is social engineering and cultural manipulation of Muslim countries so that Muslim countries will accept diversity, except it's the diversity of LGBT, the diversity of feminism, because they want to destroy the fabric of Muslim society and turn it into a godless S-hole like in the West, like in Europe. They want the diversity of promoting like atheism, because if there are atheists and agnostics who want to insult the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, or they want to rip up or burn the Quran, you should tolerate that. That's part of religious freedom. This is the kind of diversity and cultural re-engineering that they're pushing in the Muslim world through these NGOs. And the Aurat March is just one example of it. But look at the kind of societal turmoil that causes, the kind of subversion that causes in the Muslim world, as funded by the West, funded by USAID, USAID. How many billions of dollars have been funneled from USAID, the US government, to these different foundations and funds like Asia Foundation, Open Society Foundation, etc., and then they're funneled to these NGOs that operate on the basis of spreading gender equality in the Muslim world, religious freedom in the Muslim world, promotion of like an atheistic science in the Muslim world. Like that kind of education system that is being promoted in the Muslim world, where literally they are editing textbooks, Muslim textbooks, whether it be in Saudi Arabia, whether it be in Jordan, whether it be any of these Muslim countries, the textbooks are edited because the governments of those countries allow these Western organizations to come, these Western institutions to come and edit the textbooks to make sure that they're more compliant with liberal secularism and atheistic scientism and materialism. That's the curriculum that they've designed for the Muslim world. And we have to accept that. Why? Because of international law, because of human rights standards that are imposed on the entire Muslim world. And if you don't accept it, then we're going to sanction you and we're going to economically boycott you and we're going to make you suffer. And if it gets bad enough, we're going to actually send the troops. We're going to invade because we have all these bases, peppering the entire globe. We're going to send the troops and we're going to invade and we're going to occupy. That's what they've been doing with the Muslim world. That's what they've been doing for, since the beginning of colonialism. and then even post-World War II. And then Matt Walsh has the audacity to talk about, oh, what would you say if I came and preached diversity in your country? Like, how historically ignorant do you have to be, Matt Walsh? How much of a, how just completely oblivious are you to the reality of the way U.S. hegemony works?
How would you feel if I showed up in Pakistan with a mob of millions of white Christians and we got to work to drive Islamic culture out of the country and replace it with our culture?
You're doing that, you retard. You're doing that. The American government has been doing that.
How'd you feel about that? What if we did it, we didn't take over the whole country, but we picked out some enclaves here and there, increasing numbers of them, drove the Muslims out and brought in, imported a bunch of white Christians and created our, little white Christian enclaves. How would you feel about that? How would Pakistan, how would all the Pakistanis feel about it? How would they respond to that? How long would we all survive before we were rounded up and stoned to death? Not very long, I suspect. And you, Ahmed, would be at the front of the line holding the biggest rock, wouldn't you? While you're still giving your little speech about bigotry and hatred. You'd stone us to death for being too hateful. So I'm not going to be made to feel somehow guilty for wanting America to be American. I'm especially not going to be made to feel guilty about it by someone who definitely wants Pakistan to be Pakistani. I'm the one being consistent here because I don't begrudge Pakistan being Pakistani. I don't begrudge Pakistan having a Pakistani culture. It's not the culture I want to live in. That's the point. It's not American culture. I don't want any part of it, but that's your thing. You can have that in your country. That's perfectly fine.
Yeah, so again, this is completely historically illiterate. Does Matt Walsh not know anything about the past 250 years? Colonialism, like the British literally, like you want to talk about Pakistan, like let's look at the subcontinent. The British were literally occupying the subcontinent. And there were many Christians, many white Christians from Britain who were in the subcontinent. Okay, they were living there and they were ruling there. They were the ruling class, and they set up this this apartheid segregated system. And this is something that's well known. And they tried, like their whole attempt, the British, was to civilize the savages, to civilize the Indians and the Muslims in the subcontinent. And they imposed these educational programs. They imposed all kinds of laws also to limit the freedom and the rights, the equality of the non-white Indians and Muslims in the subcontinent. Like this brutal history of colonial empire, Matt Walsh is completely oblivious to that, as if it didn't even exist. And there's an interesting text from 1835 where you had a colonial official named Thomas Macaulay. Thomas Macaulay, who believed that British hard and soft power could erase this savage religion and culture that was found in India, whether it's from the Muslims or the Hindus, so that they could assimilate, so that the Indians could assimilate to British culture. This is in India. This is in the subcontinent. So in this 1835 text, it's known as the Minute on Indian Education, Macaulay writes this. Get a load of this. I feel with them that it is impossible for us, with our limited means, to attempt to educate the body of the people. We must at present do our best to form a class who may be interpreters between us and the millions whom we govern, a class of persons Indian in blood and color, but English in taste, in opinions, in morals, and in intellect. To that class we may leave it to refine the vernacular dialects of the country, to enrich those dialects with terms of science borrowed from the Western nomenclature, and to render them by degrees fit vehicles of conveying knowledge to the great mass of the population. So what this colonial official is saying is that, well, it's going to be difficult for the British to really assimilate all of these millions of brown people to the superior white European culture. That's going to be too difficult. It's not going to be effective. Instead, we need to select some of the elite, the brown elite from the Muslims and the Hindus, and we need to educate them. We need to get them to assimilate so that they're brown in color, they're brown in blood, but when it comes to their tastes, when it comes to their morals, when it comes to their intellect, when it comes to their dispositions, when it comes to their even religious sentiments, they're going to be English. They're going to be white. We create a class of those people, and then we allow them to spread those values to the masses, to these brown masses. That's how we're going to control and re-engineer Muslim Indian society in the subcontinent. That was their plan. This is coming from the colonialists. And there were, like, this is what Sayyid Ahmed Khan was. Who Sayyid Ahmed Khan was when he's founding these educational institutions and he's promoting Western education. He's moving Muslims from a traditional Islamic outlook, religious belief, into a secularized one, a liberal secularized one that just has the flavor of Islam or the flavor of India, but it's really English. It's really white European. So that's the most invasive, intrusive act that one culture can do on another, is to just completely change them, completely change their values in line with something that is being foreign imported. Like that's the history of white Europeans vis-a-vis the Muslim world. So yeah, so it's again the hypocrisy of Matt Walsh. And then also, I mean, another point that you can make is he says that, well, Muslims would have a big problem. Maybe this thought came to you as you're listening to Matt Walsh. Like, he wants to claim that Muslims have a big problem with Christians living amongst them. Hello, like, Muslims have had Christians living amongst them within the Khilafah, within all of these different empires, as early as the Umayyads, Abbasids, Uthmanis. Like, Muslims have always had a Christian minority population, Jewish minority population, and they were protected people. Like, that's officially what they're called, Ahlul Dhimma, and they were allowed to teach their religion to their children, to preserve their culture, to preserve their way of dress. That was protected, and that's why those Christians survived in Egypt, for example, in the Iberian Peninsula, for example. Jews were able to survive in Persia, for example. As Ahlul Dhimma, they survived for centuries. Christians in Sham, for example, were able to persist with their religion, with their culture for centuries under Muslim rule. How is that possible if Muslims were just there to dominate and oppress? How could they have survived? It's because Islam has that level of tolerance. Now, it's not the kind of tolerance that we see with liberal secularism, where no religion is actually tolerated. Everyone has to submit to a secular system, no matter what your religion. But that's actually, even from a Christian perspective, not preferable to the type of tolerance that Islam allowed. Yeah, you're not going to be an equal citizen with the Muslims, but you're still going to be able to practice your religion. You're still going to be able to teach your children. You're still going to maintain your culture. There's not a kind of Muslim cultural re-engineering project like the British undertook in Indian subcontinent, or in Algeria, the French did in Algeria with the North African Muslims. So this is the answer to what Matt Walsh has to say. And by the way, again, we have to bring it back to Judaism, because Matt Walsh has this blind spot, this major hypocrisy. He doesn't want to address Judaism. The only religion that says that Christians don't have a right to live, it's not Islam. Islam says that, yeah, Christians have a right to live. They can be protected people living under the protection of the caliphate. That's Islam. That's going back to the beginning of Islam. That's literally in the Quran and the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The only religion that says that Christians don't have a right to live, they don't have a right to breathe, that's Judaism. That's Judaism. And this is what is elaborated by the Rambam, their greatest Jewish theologian. Maimonides says this in his Mishnah Torah, that the Christians, they don't have a right to live. If they don't leave their Christianity, they should be executed. This is Jewish law. And those people who subscribe to that Jewish law, they are not only in the United States, They are in great halls of power in the United States, and they're dictating to the United States what America should do with its taxpayer money, what it should do with its human capital in terms of sending soldiers to die in the Middle East. Like, that is the religion of your greatest ally, Matt Walsh.
I've been stridently against any attempt by Western countries to let's import democracy, let's import Westernized concepts of freedom into these. I don't want that. I'm against it. I've always been against it. Because my point is, like, if you don't want democracy there, you don't have to have it. That's up to you. But guess what? I don't want Middle Eastern culture. I don't want it. American culture is not Middle Eastern culture. And that's not the culture that I want to live in. And that should not be the dominant culture in any community in this country, because this is America. Now, the other thing that I keep hearing.
All right, so Matt Walsh wants to pretend like he's against intervention, that he's against colonialism. This is a lie. Many a time he has expressed his support for colonialism. Let me pull up the examples for you. Hold on. Let's just pull up these examples.
Colonialism has been one of the greatest forces for good that the world has ever seen. Billions of people today are living better lives than they would have lived had Europeans not colonized the globe. The colonizers spread civilization, they spread the gospel, they spread innovation, they spread important ideas, such as the idea that you shouldn't murder your children to appease the sun god, that you shouldn't eat your enemies to absorb their life force. Did the colonizers also spread dairy products? I don't know, but I'm happy to add that to the list of triumphs. European colonialism has been one of the great.
Okay, so he is not an apologist for colonialism here, or this article on him. Matt Walsh, everybody promoting decolonization wants to murder civilians. When they call you a colonizer, says Matt Walsh, you should tell them you're welcome. And then you should prepare to defend yourself. Okay? So this is how Matt Walsh talks about colonialism. In these contexts, he's a triumphalist. He wants to beat his chest and say, yeah, might makes right. We dominated you. We won, and you should be grateful. You should thank us. That's how he talks in some contexts. But when he's wanting to attack Muslims, he wants to attack foreigners, he says that, I don't support whites coming to your countries. Why can't you respect our right to having our countries without you coming in as a foreign invasion? Why can't you respect that? It's all too convenient, isn't it? It's all too convenient.
Hearing is that our founding fathers valued diversity, specifically when it comes to Muslims. And so I see there's like 2 or 3 quotes from the same 2 or 3 quotes I've seen circulating from somebody back around George Washington talking about mentioning Muslims. But all that proves is that the founders knew that Islam existed, which of course they did, and that they didn't want to oppress or persecute Muslims, which of course they don't, and they didn't. And I don't want that. They wanted religious liberty for everybody. Again, of course they wanted that. I also want that. The people in charge can't fix a pothole, but they want you to trust them with your drinking water. Ask people in Flint, Michigan how that turned out. Lead heavy purifier. Pure air is a corroded pipes that showing on a car battery. It causes brain damage, cancer, birth defects. But you're fine when there were basically no Muslims actually here, aside from a small percentage of slaves who were Muslim. Mass migration from Arab countries was not a thing. What none of the founders ever called for, what none of them could have even conceived, was the idea that millions of people from Arab countries would flood into our country and start taking over entire communities and creating Islamic enclaves in the middle of the United States. What was not conceived is that a formerly American Christian community would become an Islamic state capital in the middle of our country. They never called for that. They never condoned it. They never supported it. They never said anything that could even be remotely construed that way. They never considered it even a possibility that it could happen. So saying that we want Muslims, we don't want to persecute anybody, including Muslims, that's great. Agreed. But that is a far cry from saying, hey, let's import millions of Arab people all at the same time and bring them into this country with their culture and just and push out American culture and supplant it with Middle Eastern culture. And if you honestly think that's what the founding fathers had in mind, then you are just too stupid to even, I can't talk to you. We can't have a conversation. You're too dumb for it.
All right, so he's really describing things in a dishonest way. Okay, he wants to say that, well, there are basically no Muslims at the founding of America. It was just a small percentage of slaves, maybe, but there was no mass immigration from Arab countries. That's true. There wasn't a mass immigration from Arab countries, but you did have a sizable, significant portion of the slaves that were forcefully brought to the United States. They were Muslims. And estimates are from 15 to 30% of the slaves that were imported from Africa, these black slaves in the transatlantic slave trade, they were Muslims. Okay? So if that is like so insignificant that it's fine, like the founding fathers, it's like they're not actually interested in having so many Muslims. That's not the vision of the founding fathers, yet they were bringing in like 15 to 30% of the slaves that they're bringing in are Muslims. Then why are you today making such a big deal about 1% of the population being Muslim? 1% of the population today being Muslim is like a big crisis. It's a takeover. It's a conquest of America by the Muslims. But in the time of the founding fathers, 15 to 30% of the slaves being Muslims, oh, that's not a big deal. Like, that's consistent with the kind of white vision for America that the founding fathers had. This is inconsistent. The point about the founding fathers, nonetheless, like, the founding fathers are okay with bringing 15 to 30% of their slaves as Muslims, or just slavery in general. They're fine with importing, okay, all these brown people, all these black and brown people, importing them by the boatloads. The founding fathers were fine with that because they were slaves who had no rights and who couldn't vote and who couldn't exercise any kind of political power. So that's the reality of white Europe. They're fine. They're absolutely fine with having a horde, like a sea of brown people being in their countries, being within the populations, as long as they have no power. And that's really the big problem that Matt Walsh or some of these people have. They have a problem with the fact that the brown people, the brown immigrants, are voting. That's the big issue that they have. Even in British India, the British were migrating to India. Why? Because of the low cost of labor, they could, with less money, live more opulent, extravagant, luxurious lifestyles. That's why they were the passport bros, you could say, of the 19th or 18th and 19th centuries. Is they are migrating to India despite being surrounded by a sea of Indians. That's no problem, because as a British citizen, you have rights, and these brown people have no rights. The brown people have no political power. You can use them as your slaves. You can use them as your servants. You can use them as your prostitutes. You can take advantage of that, the lower cost of labor. So do you see, like, the white nationalist type of line that Matt Walsh is parroting is fundamentally hypocritical. Like, you don't have a problem with a sea of brown people. You just have a problem with them having any power. That's the issue. And the founding fathers, you know, they were fine with bringing in, literally by the boatload, all of these blacks, 30% of which were Muslim. No problem. Ship them on over, because they're slaves. So that's really Matt Walsh's issue. Like, Matt Walsh's issue is not with a foreign invasion. He just has a problem with the fact that these foreigners can vote. But they'll never be honest about that. Like, that shows, like, the dishonesty inherent to this type of critique, this white nationalist critique.
And that brings us to the latest news out of Dearborn. Actually, this is from a few weeks ago. Somebody named Amy Meck posted this clip of the Islamic police chief of Dearborn. This, again, is from a few weeks ago. But just to, you know, when we talk about supplanting, right, this is not, and you can straw man it all you want. This is, no one is complaining about, oh, there are Muslims who live here. I got no issue with the fact that Muslims live in the country. I got no issue with, the issue is always, okay, you live in this country, assimilate into our culture. You do not supplant our culture with yours. Okay, you cannot require us to assimilate to you. You assimilate to us. That's it. Pretty reasonable. I think that's pretty reasonable. But here's what's actually happening, and this is the police chief of Dearborn describing it. Listen to this.
Wonderful wife, Deanna, a strong, proud Palestinian woman. When I joined the department, Dearborn's Arab American population was nearly 50%. Yet less than 3% of our police force reflected the community that we served. The department was not always welcoming to people who were different. Today, the Dearborn Police Department is the department that I wish I worked for when I first started my career. It's now a department that reflects and embraces the community it serves, with 45% of our officers being Arab American. It's a department that respects the dignity and rights of all individuals, including the right to wear hijab, even when facing the justice system. It's a department that is taking meaningful steps to address historical inequity. Together, we've built a police department that values diversity, equity, and respect, one that serves all of Dearborn with honor and integrity. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. I'm proud to serve as your chief of police.
Alhamdulillah, he says at the end there. That means all praise is due to Allah. That's a police chief in America giving praise to Allah during an official address to the public in uniform. So that's great.
Like, this is so stupid, like, from Matt Walsh. Of all the things that you can criticize, like, you know that Allah simply means God in Arabic. Okay? And when Arab Christians say God, they also use the word Allah. Okay? This is the case even before Islam. Even before Islam, Christians were using the word Allah for God. It's Arabic. You know, that is the Arabic word for God. And in Hebrew, by the way, this is similar to Eloha. Eloha is also the one of the Hebrew terms for God. And Jesus also, speaking Aramaic, the Aramaic term for God is Allah. Allah. So would he have a problem with people speaking Aramaic or Hebrew? And Alhamdulillah, the expression Alhamdulillah is used by Arab Christians. So again, like, this is, he claims to be Christian first, but your critique of Muslims applies to also these Arab Christians. You want the Arab Christians to assimilate as well, to get out? Okay, maybe that's the case,
right? Now, you're not allowed to have any problem. Who could possibly have an issue with that? Of course, every person, if you're not a Muslim and you see that, you find that unsettling. Everyone does. Every single one of us does. It's just that you're supposed to pretend you don't.
It's just because you're ignorant. Like, you have like a very superficial understanding of people around you. And you don't get to have that kind of superficial understanding when your country is dominating the entire globe. Like, your country, the United States, has this hegemony over the entire world. So for you to be that myopic and that culturally illiterate, where you don't even know that the word Allah is Arabic for God, and that even Christian Arabs will use the word Allah or say Alhamdulillah, the fact that you're unaware of this, despite your country being involved in the Middle East for decades, you know, over 70 years at this point, that speaks to your lack of concern for the world, like the people of the world. And someone like Matt Walsh is so stupid. He's like, yeah, I only care about America. I only care about Americans. But you clearly don't. Like, you clearly care about Jews. You clearly care about Ben Shapiro. You clearly care about Israel. You clearly care about American power, American hegemony, American economic dominance. So don't accuse others of not caring for American values enough to assimilate to your culture when you don't care about anyone other than yourself, despite being involved in subjugation of the entire world.
Meanwhile, he tells us that not long ago, 3% of the police force in the city was Arab. Now it's 45%. So tell me, how do you achieve that kind of demographic transformation in such a short amount of time? 3% to 45%. How do you do that? Well, you do it intentionally. That's how you do it. You do it by driving out the white Christians and replacing them with Arabs. You do it on purpose. That's the only way to do it. You cannot do that any other way than by saying, this is the result we want, and we're going to do whatever is necessary to make that result happen. And that's what they did. And they're not even hiding it. I'm not saying I'm not revealing anything here. They're very clear about it. They prioritized Arabs in the hiring process, pushed out the white Christians, and this is an intentional effort to Islamicize the police force. And he admits that proudly. It's a great thing, he says, because now Arabs in the community have a police force that looks like them.
And this is really retarded, like his analysis. You can get that big change in percentage just because of influx of immigrants coming into that part of the city, like coming into Dearborn. It's not like he's making it sound like it's some kind of conspiracy, like a plot, like there were a bunch of Muslims who said that, okay, how can we take over and conquer this city and drive out the Christians? Like, let's have this, Abdul, you make sure to call your family members and take over these houses on this street, and I'm going to call Ahmed, and you call Bilal, and you call Fatima. Like, that's the way that he's envisioning it. But the way that you have these enclaves that are found in many of these major American cities is that there is a core group of businesses, for example, or schools or religious institutions like mosques. And then immigrants that are coming into the country, they want to go live near people like them, of the same culture, of the same religion. And so they move to that area. It's completely organic behavior. It's not something that is a premeditated plot. And then if you have an influx of migration from refugees from these countries that you've been bombing, from these Middle Eastern countries that you've been bombing and you've been destabilizing for decades on behalf of Israel, your boss, Matt Walsh, then there's going to be like a large increase in the percentage of Arabs in those cities, and by comparison, the proportion of Christian whites is going to decrease proportionally without anyone having been driven out. No one is driving anyone out. Like you're projecting like Israeli behavior on Muslims. Like Muslims aren't coming into Dearborn, Michigan, or Anaheim, California, and going to the door of the Christians saying, hey, this is our house now, we're going to move in. That's not what Muslims are doing. Like, you're thinking about Israeli settlers doing that to Palestinian Muslims and Christians. That's not what Muslims are doing in America. So this is, and again, like, this is how you see Matt Walsh is doing propaganda for Israel. He wants to, all of the criticisms that you have of Israeli behavior, Jewish behavior, he wants to project that onto Muslims, and he wants to portray Muslims as doing exactly that. So he has to stretch and exaggerate and outright fabricate claims against Muslims in order to draw that parallel, to make it seem like, oh, well, anything that you say about Jews, you have to say twice as much about Muslims, the Muslim invasion. This is the entire trick of this kind of video. Okay.
This is the kind of thing that's considered acceptable for every group on the planet, again, except for white Americans, especially white Christians. In America, every other group can just like openly say, hey, I want to be around people who look like me and are from my culture. And I want institutions to be run by people from my culture. Every group on the planet can openly speak that way. And all of them do, all the time. We're the only ones who aren't allowed to. That's been the deal. That's been the bargain for decades. And you notice the kind of circular logic that's at play here, because so they import Arabs into Michigan, And then they tell us that, well, there's so many Arabs here, you know, because, well, wait, we have a few Arabs now, but so now we need a lot more. And the justification for importing more is always that, well, we've already imported them. So this is how it works. So you take a community that's almost entirely white and Christian, and then you say, hey, we need to diversify. Let's import a few Arabs. Then once you import them, you say, hey, well, now that we have this minority group here, they should be more supported. So let's import some more for the sake of diversity. And then once you have a critical mass, you say, hey, well, there's so many of them here, they should be represented better. So let's start driving the white Christians out of positions of authority and installing them instead. And this continues exponentially until before long, the white Christian community has become, the formerly white Christian community has become an Arab Muslim community. That's the way it goes. And
so there's still talking about 1% of the population of 350 million Americans, 1%, you know, not even 5 million Muslims in all of America. This is, again, the threat that he's talking about, the conquest.
And that's the process. And all the while, Arab Muslims in America are allowed to say, hey, I want to be around other Arab Muslims. I want my government to be run by people like me. This is what I want. They're allowed to say that. And if you're a white Christian, you say, well, you know what? I want people like me running the government. That is unspeakable bigotry. How dare you? So this is the double, this is the, you know, you can't, well, it's not even a double standard, actually. It's a pretty consistent standard that is applied where they say, okay, well, here, if you're not white Christian, here's what you're allowed to say. But if you are, these are all the things you're not allowed to say. And it's a standard that's applied pretty consistently.
And this is such a ridiculous misrepresentation. And you see a lot of white nationalists also do this. They want to cry that, oh, we have no power. We have no ability to self-determine our future. And like, what world are you living in? Like, if you look at all the different races, especially over the past 300 years, like which races have had the most power in the past 300 years? Which races have had the most power, the most wealth? Obviously, whites are at the top of the list. Whites and then followed by Jews. Like, those are the two races that have had the most power, wealth, technology for the past 300 years. And it's not like they've been benevolent about it. It's not like that they've been dominating, they've been subjugating, there have been genocides, there have been nonstop wars, there have been occupations, there have been colonial repression. Okay, that's happened throughout the world involving Native Americans, for example, South Americans, North Africans, Sub-Saharan Africans, Southeast Asians, Indonesians, the Chinese, the Indians in the subcontinent, Central Asians as well, because of the USSR, for example. Like, whites and Jews, like those two races have been dominant, and they have just, you know, gallons and gallons of blood on their hands, of the millions that have been genocided at their hands through this hegemonic system that they have created. So imagine that history, and then you have someone like Matt Walsh or whoever crying about, oh, whites have nothing. We are being genocided. There's a white genocide that's happening that's taking us out. Like, okay, granted, white identity is under attack. Yes, I am sympathetic to any kind of attack on identity by liberal powers, by liberal secularism. And I'm definitely sympathetic to the kind of attack on white identity by Jewish groups or Jewish intellectuals or whatever. I'm sympathetic to that because they do the same thing to Muslims. But it is completely out of touch with reality. It's out of touch with history to say that whites are this defenseless group, like this weak, defenseless group that has been subjugated by the non-whites, by the brown people. Like, this is completely backwards. And it's outrageous. Like, it's outrageous levels of hypocrisy to cry like this about the Browns taking over. Okay, and the fact that, again, they have economic power and they have technological power. So they use that economic power to bribe the rest of the world to get their way, and they use the technological power to subjugate the world if the world steps out of line. Like, that's what nuclear power is about. Like, which countries have nuclear weapons. Vast majority are white countries. They're white. And one Jewish country that arguably is the most insane when it comes to nuclear power, with the Samson option, for example. These are the groups that have the technological power. They're the ones who have the most advanced fighter jets. They're the ones who have the most advanced systems of domination. So this must be noted, and we can't let them get away with this. Like Muslims, I know there are a lot of Muslims who are sympathetic to the white nationalists, to the Christian nationalists, to people like Nick Fuentes and others. That's fine. Like, I'm sympathetic to them as well. I think it's good to collaborate with them as well, but we can't let them get away with this lie, because it's so outrageous to say that whites have had no power or have no power. This is just too brazen, and they use it specifically against Muslims in a very dishonest way, to attack Muslims and to claim that Muslims are somehow violating some kind of equality standard or reciprocity, or Muslims are the ones who are just rude and they don't have a kind of charity or compassion for these whites when they invade their countries and they take over, and they have these grooming gangs and they're raping everyone. Like that. Okay, you have a criticism of Muslim minorities, fine, but can we put it on the scale of world history? And not even history, it's like the present reality of white domination of the entire globe. And this is why I point out as well, like you'll have these white nationalists who will point out the fact that, oh, look at the overrepresentation of Jews in academia. Look at the overrepresentation of Jews in media itself. The social media companies being owned by an overrepresentation of Jews. Look at the billionaires of the world. There's an overrepresentation of Jews. They'll point these facts out, and it's good to point that out. However, if you look at the scale of world power, there's also a overrepresentation of whites. There's an overrepresentation of white billionaires, white tech moguls, white-controlled media. When you look at the entire globe and the diversity in the global population, there's also an overrepresentation of white power. And just in the same way that white Europeans are not comfortable with an overrepresentation of Jewish power, because Jewish power is going to pursue Jewish interests over European or white interests, the entire globe is reasonably uncomfortable about the fact that an overrepresentation of white is going to pursue white interests over their interests. And that is not just a theoretical possibility. That's what they've been doing for around 300 years. Around 300 years of this. So this is a kind of blind spot. It's a huge blind spot that a lot of these white nationalists have. And as Muslims, like, we can give this kind of critique. Like, this is just a critique on consistency. We are questioning the consistency of these people. I don't have to appeal to liberal progressivism. I would never do that as a Muslim in order to critique these people.
Which is why, by the way, I have to admit, I was wrong about something. I confess that when conservatives would fret about Sharia law coming to America, I didn't really share their concerns for a lot. Actually, I thought it was kind of a boomer cringe thing for a long time. It's the kind of thing you see 65-year-olds posting about on Facebook. And because I thought, well, Sharia law is the least of our concerns, given that the leftist project is the opposite of Sharia law. I mean, it's the extreme opposite, right? They want naked cross-dressers running around. They want men in women's rooms. It's the opposite of Sharia law. The extreme opposite. But I was wrong, because it is coming here through mass migration. I mean, obviously, right? It's pretty obvious. That's how these things come here, is through mass migration. Now, are we going to have a Sharia law federal government anytime soon? No. But what you end up with are
you sure?
These communities where...
Are you sure about that, Matt Walsh? What if tomorrow Donald Trump converts and he declares himself as the Sultan or the Caliph, and he turns America into a caliphate? What if that happens, Matt Walsh? All the generals, all the 4-star generals and the National Security Council, they all convert to Islam. And they want to establish the based caliphate. What are you going to do then, Matt Walsh?
Again, you push everybody out, you import your people, and now it's, now you have Pakistan right in the middle of the country. Just like we have Somalia right in the middle of the country.
What is he talking about? Again, like 1%. Like what is the Pakistan in the middle of the country like? Do you have China in the middle of the country? Do you have like little Mexico in the middle of the country? Maybe. Like maybe that's his conception. It'd make more sense when it comes to Mexicans or it comes to Chinese, because there's just so many, much more of them than Muslims or Arabs.
This is not assimilation. This was never supposed to be the bargain. This was not supposed to be the deal. But it's what has happened. And we should not feel any shame about protesting it and speaking honestly about it.
Okay, that's the end of it. Yeah, so anxiety about Sharia law. Like, what kind of Sharia law are Muslims bringing? Like, are they Muslims coming, like, in Dearborn? Are they chopping people's hands off? Are they stoning the adulterers in Dearborn? Are they, like, implementing capital punishment for apostasy or blasphemy? Like, these Muslims who are immigrating, they're not that based. They're not implementing Sharia in that sense. They're just engaging in private prayer. Their women are wearing hijab, niqab sometimes. Their children are going to Islamic school and memorizing the Quran. Like, they're praying in their mosques. Like, this is, the evil Sharia that's coming. Like, in fact, like, this is the Sharia that is being practiced by Muslims is very much in line with American conservatism and Christian values. And that's why some of the main protests that were happening in certain parts of the US against the LGBT curricula in schools, it was Muslims. And in Dearborn, in fact, I think Dearborn was one of these hotspots of Muslims protesting back in the Biden years. So, yeah, and for better or worse, the Muslims in America are not that based. When they are implementing the Sharia, it's just like their personal practice. And then if you have other Muslims, like the ultra-liberals, you have like Ilhan Omar, Zohran Mamdani, then they're dancing in the pride parades. They have like what Zohran Mamdani announced, that he has like a Jewish rabbi, transgender, in his administration. Like that, this is the kind of Sharia that the Muslims are importing, apparently. So, yeah, and of course, the big blind spot. He has nothing to say about Jews. He has nothing to say about Jewish law. Like, this is why we have to popularize. Like, that's part of the reason that I do debates with Jews, to talk about and debate Jewish law. It's important because there's lack of awareness of what Jews actually believe and their Talmud. So if you raise awareness about that, then the same criticisms, like the same kind of anxiety about Sharia law, would be extended to Talmudic law, except Talmudic law is much worse from the perspective of a Christian, let alone an American. So as I said, like the Talmudic law is anti-Christ. Literally, they believe that Jesus Christ is boiling in a vat of feces in hell. And according to Mosaic law, as interpreted by the Rambam, Maimonides, Christians should be put to death. They don't even have the right to live. And the Talmud has all of these rules that allow Jews to lie and cheat when it comes to dealing with the Goyim, when it comes to dealing with non-Jews, especially Christians. And I had a whole debate about that with a yeshiva-trained Jew. And he tried to explain his way out of that, but I don't think he did a very good job. So Matt Walsh won't talk about Jewish law. He won't talk about the Mosaic law being practiced in some of these Jewish-dominant areas of the United States, like Brooklyn, New York. New York itself. Like, New York itself is massive Jewish population. You won't see Matt Walsh have any complaint, any criticism of that, or complain about lack of assimilation. You won't hear Matt Walsh talking about the rabbis doing oral suction on the baby penises after circumcision. You won't see Matt Walsh pointing that out as a big problem. Lack of assimilation of the Jews. So that is Matt Walsh. That is the immigration. You can see, like, it's a really hypocritical, hollow discourse. Whether it's coming from Matt Walsh, but even if it's coming from more articulate proponents, more articulate critics of immigration, like Keith Woods, for example, like, this is the way that you challenge them and you press them to deal with the larger historical and geopolitical reality that they want to obscure and appeal to people's sentiments like equality, like, oh, don't genocide us, whites have a right to live. Yeah, whites have a right to live. That's true. I agree with that. I completely agree with that. But you have to recognize that the immigration system that is in place right now is a product of hundreds of years of history. Like, there's a context to why Europe is less white now than it was 200 years ago. There is a context to that, and white nationalists, like the founding fathers or the British colonialists, who were white nationalists, who were white supremacists, they believed in the superiority of the white race. They contributed to the browning of America, the browning of Europe. And those are just inconvenient facts and inconvenient truths for the white nationalist discourse. Okay, so that's a good episode there, focused on that issue. I hope you enjoyed it. Maybe I'll save the Muhammad hijab clip for tomorrow. React to that. His statement on female speakers, I think it's worth commenting on. You might be surprised at what I have to say about that. So you'll have to tune in tomorrow. And let me just look at the chat, see what you guys have for me. Hopefully some good comments. Huncho Man says, Somalis humiliated America in 1993. They never forget. What is that referring to? I know that, I believe Somalia, or was it Sudan, that was bombed by Bill Clinton. So my 1990s history is failing me right now to know when the Somalis humiliated America. Lord Meislin says, is the kind of Christian Trojan horse for what is basically white supremacy really that different to a leftist country? The preservation of family values comes with the religio-ethnic asterisk, whose family? So you're claiming that Christian nationalism is a Trojan horse for white supremacy, and really, is there any difference between a white majority country versus like a leftist country? That's a good point. Like, I make this point. If you take out the religious values, if you take out the Christian values, then having an all-white Britain or an all-white America is still going to have the OnlyFans, is still going to have the LGBT, is still going to have the degeneracy. So you need to have actual Christian values, but how deep do these Christian values go? And you see this a kind of superficial nature of, like, even Matt Walsh's Christianity. Like, it seems to be more of symbols and tokenism. And that is simply because there isn't a robust system of Christian life, Christian practice. Like, it's just a mix of different cultures and heritage over time that is malleable. They don't really they don't have a Sharia like Muslims do. They don't have a fiqh like Muslims do. They don't have a preserved way of life enshrined in law like Muslims do. And that makes them susceptible to constant change, evolution, and constant evolution due to political pressure, like secular pressure. So this is a problem for Christians. This is why Christians are more likely to secularize as opposed to Muslims. Muslims can stick to their Sharia, to the fiqh, and say, no, it's actually haram to start giving women these kinds of rights. That's contrary to our family law. That's contrary to our marriage law. That's contrary to our the guidance of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Christians don't have an analog to that. It's just a hodgepodge. They got rid of their canon law, so that's a problem for them. Last word says the gall of Muslims 7,000 miles away to tell Americans, as Americans 7,000 miles away tell Muslims how Palestine should be non-existent. I don't get what it means. The gall of Muslims to tell Americans as Americans. Okay, so yeah, the hypocrisy. That's a good point. Thank you. Last word. Lesboy says your insights are quite genuine. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Vasmi says, as a revert, all Muslims have been a blessing. However, the most kind, helpful, and generous ones have been the Somalis. I can't praise them enough for their love of Allah and His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. MashaAllah. Yeah, a lot of good Somalis in the U.S. Definitely proud of our Somali brothers and sisters. And I think a lot of them don't even like Ilhan Omar. Like, I don't know why Ilhan Omar is still winning any elections. Like, how is she winning elections? How does she have any kind of support? Is it really like a Somali support of her? I don't think so. QWERTY says, the Arab community, both Muslim and Christian, has been in Michigan for over a century. They came after the Ottoman Empire collapsed to help America build cars. Yeah, a lot of the Arabs in Michigan have been there for 2 or 3 generations. And they're kind of a good demographic to look at to see like what assimilation does. Like these Arabs in Michigan have assimilated. Like that's a problem. Like you have these Arab third generation, they go by names like Robert and Sarah, but they have like these Arab last names. Like they have like a last name that is clearly Arab, like Abdul Malik or Malik even. And you can tell like it's Robert Abdul Malik. And you say, oh, are you Muslim? He's like, no, my grandfather was Muslim. Oh, your grandfather back in Syria or back in Palestine? They're like, no, my grandfather immigrated here back in the 60s. And, you know, so you're not Muslim. You don't know how to pray, fast. It only took 3 generations for them to assimilate and to become sometimes Christians, but mostly just secular people. That's the danger. That's why I tell Muslims, don't immigrate to the West. For the vast majority of you, it's not worth it. You're going to undermine your akhirah and potentially the akhirah of your descendants, your progeny. So that's my advice. Has Matt Walsh, this is Misak Amr. Has Matt Walsh ever spoken about tunnels underneath a synagogue in Brooklyn? I don't think so. I don't think so. That might be getting too close to the sun. He might be outing his boss. A Muslim says, where do I learn Islam part-time, working on my nursing degree, and need 2 years, planning to take AMAU's 5-year Ilm track while doing so? I'm 26, male. I don't know what their Ilm track is, what AMAU, I don't know what that stands for. So I can't recommend them. But if you want to study Islam part-time, like it's better to find some local scholars. If you live in any kind of big city, you can find different groups that will be studying with the imam. Just go to the masjid and ask around. Look on websites and ask around. The local option is always going to be better than the online option. But if you don't have any option, there are different programs that you can check out part-time. I don't know what AMAU is, but you have like Darul Uloom online. That seems to be a rigorous program that I can recommend. Okay, guys, those are the super chats. Appreciate all of your support, and I appreciate the moderators. I see Muslim Boogeyman, as always. Thanks a lot, bro, for your moderation. Hope you like the show. Inshallah, we're gonna be back tomorrow. We're gonna react to Brother Muhammad Hijab. We're gonna talk about any other news that comes up. There was also a advice on domestic violence by this Muslim organization, Peaceful Family Projects. I shared it on Telegram. I don't know if you saw. If you're on my Telegram channel, you should join. And that is interesting how they're defining these. This is a Muslim organization defining domestic violence. And they have this long list of everything that counts as domestic violence and domestic abuse. So I think it's worth like going through that and talking about it, because they're pushing that definition, this feminist definition of abuse, onto the entire Muslim community, and they're preaching it at the masajid, on the mimbar, at Friday prayers. So it's worth reacting to and responding to. I'll be doing that tomorrow, inshallah. And then don't forget, this Saturday, a new program, a new format that we're going to have. It's going to be not only me, but we're going to have a couple of brothers, some good brothers from Project Ihya, good speakers, and I'm going to be joined by them. And we're going to team up, and we're going to face these Christians and atheists and whoever, Wahhabis, whoever. Come one, come all, and we're going to debate in a live format. It's open. We're going to put the link. People can join. And we're going to be debating different topics. The initial topic that we're going to start with is, what is a bigger danger to Christianity? Is it atheism, or is liberal atheism, or is it Islam? That's going to be the general topic, but we could also debate other things, maybe, depending on if we have time, depending on the situation. So check that out. It's not going to be on this channel. The clips will be posted on this channel later after the fact. But if you want to see live and you want to participate live, you have to go to our Debating Modernity channel, our sister channel. And it's a smaller channel that we just started, but it's usually clips from the show that are on that channel. That'll be live streamed. You can join. We'll put out the link during the live stream. And I'll look forward to talking to you then, inshallah. I'll also post it so you can see the link. But if you go to Debating Modernity, it's also in our channel homepage. You can go and subscribe so you get the notification. I'll also post it in the comment section, inshallah. So yeah, go ahead and like the video, subscribe, and leave a comment. And I will see you on the next episode of Haqiqatjou, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.